All right. This is part two of episode whatever we're on, 70 something or other.
71.
Right.
And this is a good place to insert our apology for having the
Yes.
biggest gaffe we've had on YouTube yet
Yes.
to date, because it's several layers deep. But we missed a lot of opportunities on episode 69,
Mm-hmm.
especially since our Wheel of Time episode 69 was all about the girls and the
Mm-hmm.
maidens. And so that might be the biggest mistake we've made on the YouTubes,
Yeah.
including
A-
banned videos and everything. We dropped the ball there. Episode 69 passed us by without comment.
at least you had an accidentally appropriately punny title for episode 69.
Well, I was thinking about it and that just popped in. Sometimes I can be semi-witty. It's just rare, but when it's there, it's pretty good. Uh,
Uh,
but we're gonna see that in Matt here because again, we keep talking about how your favorite character is Perrin and my
mhm.
favorite character is Matt, and a lot of it has to do with our own personality types. And Matt's very much a just wing it dude.
Yeah,
And
and these chapters, the ones we've just recently covered, and then this chunk here that we're going to try and get through. Um, so I was thinking the other night when I was reading, and I sent you this message, is I think through where we're at now, or at least is through the Dragon Reborn, I think Perrin's story arc is the best of what we've seen so far.
yeah, you brought that
And
up, and that was an interesting point because when I read your text, I immediately said, well, Perrin's is the most interesting story arc because you said to this point.
mhm,
And
exactly. And that's why this chunk of the book is so good, because it's kind of the, as Churchill put it, the end of the beginning of Perrin's opening arc, right? The first chunk of his arc, he's slowly coming to terms with who and what he is, and that kind of happens here in the Dragon Reborn. But then you have the beginnings of Matt becoming a lot of people's favorite character, because we didn't get a lot of him in Eye of the World and The Great Hunt,
in his defense, he was sick.
because of what was going on with him. Did we get any points of view of Matt in those two books? I'm not sure that we did. I'm not sure that we ever got a chapter from his point of view until the Dragon Reborn.
No, well, yeah, no, we didn't. Not at all.
Yeah.
Just the only other contender, I think, because and it's this podcast reread that really brought it to my attention because we've talked about her so much is Nynaeve.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I'd probably give Perrin the edge right now is because Nynaeve's is kind of Perrin's is starting to come to an arc where Nynaeve is like still on the upswing
Yeah.
of hers. We're still clicking up the roller coaster
You
with
also
her.
get a little more from Perrin here in the Dragon Reborn, because he's by himself
Mhm.
of the three, main lads. And
Well, and
then
that might be
Nynaeve.
something affecting this analysis too, because most of Nynaeve interaction is through other people's eyes.
Exactly. We don't get perspective chapters from her until later. We also don't get her kind of splitting off on her own until later. For the longest time, it's wrapped up in either, with the whole Two Rivers group, or with Moraine. And then when she gets to the tower, it's with Egwene and Elaine. So it's the three of them together. But she is also starting to come along. We saw that in our last one, where she kind of takes charge when they meet the Aiel. She's more comfortable, more confident, or at least outwardly so, because she's more in her element, because it's healing, and that's what she
Mm.
does. She's also has that background of being the wisdom, so she's used to being an authority figure and dealing with other authority figures.
I want to stop for just a second though before we get too deep in the Wheel of Time weeds. Uh, we just finished an episode on fitness, which is part one. I encourage everybody watching this that's here for the Wheel of Time, go ahead and pop over to those as well. We didn't do any politics this week. we'll continue this episode. We'll do some on Thursday that like to watch that. We got, again, more COVID stuff to talk about. And but yeah, the fitness episode is great. And for the fans of the books, one of the best. I encourage you to pay attention to those as well, and let's get healthier and together as well as we journey through these. So,
all right. Well, into the chapter we're on, then chapter 40. So there's a couple of things I really like about this chapter is we see kind of live action what Suian was talking about when she had Matt alone and told the story about her uncle who was a scoundrel but died rescuing people from a fire because he wouldn't stop going in while there was still someone to rescue. And now we see that in action. So that we had that foreshadowing there, and he's done kind of similar things, but it was always forced on him. Right. So like when he saved the ship at the end of his section last time, you know, when the killers came on the ship trying to take him out, he takes them all down. But that was him protecting himself, and that was it kind of forced on him. He could have just stayed in the shadows here, and instead, as the title is, a hero in the night, he jumps down, like, as he thinks of it, some fool in a Gleeman's Tale to rescue Aludra, who's being, you know, accosted, threatened, probably going to be killed by a group of toughs. And he jumps down into it, just right into the thick of it.
I'm not 100% with your assessment there, because those of us that have the upbringing that he would have had, it's not really a choice. You can't watch that.
Yeah.
You know, you can't watch that. I think anybody that has half a heart would have done the same thing. He just is successful. Most of us would not have fared well against trained killers.
Cursing himself all the way.
Yeah.
As he does it. But I think that is a good point. That is, no, technically he couldn't have. Someone else could have just hid in the shadows and not gotten involved. But that's the point of Matt, is that no, he can't. He'll grumble, he'll complain, he'll call himself an idiot for it, but he's gonna do it. The other thing I like is actually at the very opening of the chapter, where he's as the Brits would say, taking the piss out of the captain, out of the riverboat captain, because he cannot suffer puffed up fools. He cannot. And this is, we've already seen an inkling of this, and this is just going to grow, of his disdain for nobility, that birth does not make you noble. And his experience with them is that they are puffed up, arrogant, and unrightfully so. And he has to try and, you know, burst their bubbles just innately. He can't help himself.
Well,
do you have any more?
We can sake back to Egwene visions here. So now it's not a spoiler anymore. Matt it's not a complete assessment of the vision, but it's a start to it. Matt just saved an illuminator, who in payment gave him fireworks, which he thinks is awesome because he's Matt, who's still a kid inside. So
yeah. And
well, and on top of that, he's got this gold now, but fireworks are so valuable in this world that it's basically a packet of gold, realistically. In fact, I think he keeps telling himself he's going to sell them.
Well, and Tom, is it Tom or Matt that tries to stop her? I think it's Tom tries to stop her and say, you know, that's worth way too much. You should keep that for yourself. Yeah. Tom is the one who says, you could sell those for enough to live 10 days or more at a good inn and eat well every day. Because they are incredibly valuable. And part of that is the secrecy of it, which we're going to see in a few chapters when we come back to Matt and Tom, of that secrecy is what makes Matt so incredibly fascinated by them. And that he just can't help himself. He needs to know what makes these things work.
Well, and that's, again, it's a similarity that's completely different between Perrin and Matt. So Perrin thinks of everything like a puzzle, like it can be reasoned out and made work if he just figured out the problem from the right angle. Where Matt is just a general curiosity.
Yes, Matt is. I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I think it's in that chapter where he thinks about the time, uses as an example the time where he had opened up Mayor Alver's clock, which this is like a child opening up your computer. Taking the case off your computer. That's what this is.
And by the way,
like,
it's the most expensive computer you've ever bought.
Exactly. Yeah. And so Perrin, I like that analogy because Perrin is the type of person who, if he wanted to build his own computer, he's going to think it through. He's going to, measure twice, cut once. He's going to think it through, figure out what all the pieces do and how they go together, and then he's going to start. Matt's a tinkerer. He's just going to start doing and figure it out as he goes. Because he's got that insatiable curiosity, as well as that, kind of ADHD fidgetiness to him that he just wants to take it apart and see it all and then figure it out as he goes.
Just funny because you get a huge left brain, right brain divide between these two guys. Yeah, they both have the same values, but they go about it in such different ways. It's like we talked about with the way back in the beginning of all this with the border wall. We think the right answer is the same thing, but we have completely different reasons for doing so. And the same for their curiosity. Perrin wants to make the structure that makes it work, where Matt just kind of wants to know why it works. Yeah.
And that's why I like, back at the beginning of this reread is your take on the three boys, because then Rand is the one in the middle. Rand is the one that has a little bit of both. And that's why he kind of sits in the middle and is kind of the default leader of the three of them.
Well, definitely Perrin and Matt are the easier ones to analyze. Perrin is definitely most likely highest in conscientiousness of the big five personality traits. And Matt is by far the highest in openness. Which for those that know, conscientiousness is it's structure. It's your military life. It's not from what we're going to see with Matt later standpoint, but your bed is made every day. You start the day with this, and you go through your pattern to have the best day. Everything is planned, and again, works like clockwork. You structure your life to where it works like clockwork. Where openness is very it's in the name. It's open to new experiences, and there's that general curiosity. So both of them are highly intelligent, but Matt's definitely more open, and Perrin wants to make it work. Which, from a business standpoint, the best partnerships are having one on each side. I think that's one of the problems I had when I went into business. My partner was also very open. And neither, she was very structured, but almost OCD way. It was kind of annoying, but maybe that's why we fought. but yeah, that's definitely theirs. Rand's a little harder to pin down because probably ultimately, even though he looks shy in the first couple books, he's probably the most extroverted of them all.
Yeah.
or the most even keel across all the traits. Where did you want to go with this? Because we need to get through the palace scene, introduce new characters, and then get back to Perrin. We get back to Perrin first.
Yeah, it goes back to Perrin first, and this is what you were referencing earlier. So it's page 481 in the paperback. Is Perrin will step up. So Matt's going to jump out of the night cursing himself like a fool in a Gleeman's Tale, but he's still going to do it. Perrin doesn't even think about it. He's going to step up because it's the right thing to do. And this is where, are you sure enough of that to risk it? Lan spoke quietly and his face did not change, but Zareen swallowed again. There's no need to threaten her, Lan, Perrin said. He was surprised to realize he was glaring at the warder. So this is where Lan threatens her because Moiraine wants her to go away. She's ticked off to have learned that Zareen at this point is following them and knows that Moiraine is Aes Sedai, although that shouldn't have been that much of a surprise since they could tell that she was Saldean. So it's quite possible, if not probable, that she knows what one looks like when she has the ageless face.
Yeah, just being a borderlander.
Yeah.
And most of your hunters for the Horn were noble.
Because they had to be, because they're the ones that can afford to go off on, some fool quest.
At least merchant status,
But I like the interaction here in this chapter because we're reinforcing Moiraine that with the oath that she demands of Fail of on your hunter's oath, you follow us, you're one of us, you do as I say, and you do not leave. Because just down in the next chapter after what I just read is when Moiraine says, where is it? Once you know more than you should of what we do, I will not allow you to fall into the wrong hands. Know that for truth, girl. So we reinforced how deadly, literally deadly serious Moiraine is about her quest. We start to get more of Fael's personality, which we kind of touched on last time when we were talking about how complementary her and Perrin are. So we're starting to see some of that of her outgoing, extroverted nature, the way she is. And then we start to see the beginnings of the attraction here, because obviously, as much as Perrin wants to grumble about how she acts, and he doesn't like the fact that the way he immediately thinks about Min and her visions, I think his immediate resistance to and hostility to her is because he feels like this is someone who's being forced on him. But he's still a young man. He's an 18, 19-year-old. And here you have a good-looking young woman showing interest in you. So there's obviously going to be some hormones flowing there and some kind of attraction that you get at the end of the chapter when he drags her up on behind him on his horse and kind of kicks the horse along to make her have to grab hold of him. What do you think easing the badger means?
Well, I wanted to say one more thing about Lan is not only do you have this harshness from Moiraine, but we keep talking about the rock that Lan is, that Nynaeve keeps kind of etching away at, eroding. He basically just shows his willingness to kill someone because Moiraine said so, and to save her mission as well.
Right.
So
right.
I mean, someone who is perfectly innocent in every other way, but they may know too much.
Right. Well, speaking of Lan, I did skip over something that's fun, which is back at the beginning of this chapter, we start to see kind of those cracks in Lan that we've talked about before. of um because Lan is kind of smirking at the situation and Moraine's annoyance with Fail. A few days earlier, Perrin had Moraine ask Lan in a voice like Perrin had heard Moraine ask Lan in a voice like ice whether he saw something to laugh at. I would never laugh at you, Moraine, said I. He had replied calmly. But if you truly intend to send me to Myril, I must become used to smiling. I hear that Myril tells her warders jokes. Guardians must smile at their bondholders' quips. And so he's taking the opportunity, because kind of the last time we really saw him in this vein was way back in the Watchers chapter of the Great Hunt, when Moraine tells him that she's arranged to have the bond pass on her death. And so now we see, a little more of Lan than just the stony-faced warder. And again, part of that, from that chapter perspective from Moraine, is part of that is the Two Rivers folk. It's first the Boyz and his connection to them and training them, especially Rand, because he's training him in the sword, as we saw when he coached him on presenting himself before the Amarillan, and then Nynaeve and his attraction there, and why I hate the frickin' series. Stop rushing things, people. Set up and pay off. All right.
I do question, because they've gone so deep into making Lan this compassionate human in the series, that if we end up in a moment like that, are they going to have that moment? Or is it just going to be, if she even shows up in the series, we've got this new person, Zareen. It's another character. She kind of likes Perrin. Okay.
Well, yeah,
and then we'll get some teen angst drama between the two. And,
almost certainly. And instead of the well-crafted drama that you get from RJ here, which is, again, Perrin doesn't like the things that are being forced on him from the pattern, even though he is grudgingly starting to accept, to a degree, the wolfness, which is something else I wanted to mention, is that as we see him start to accept this, it doesn't mean it's over. That doesn't mean his, growth is done. That doesn't mean he's going to stop developing as a character, right? That it's a process. So he's not suddenly going to start acting like Elias.
So then we get to the city, and Perrin's spidey sense is perking up.
Yeah. Now, and we get to the dirty songs, which are hilarious. And so I don't know that we've seen something like this before, but the setup here is all the bad that's going on in the city as Moraine is questioning the innkeeper about how things have been. And so something is off. And we don't know what yet, but something is off in a similar way to how Rand is making things go off in the areas that he's around, except as Moraine talked about to Perrin, that's balanced. The things that happen with Rand, they're extremes. It's either side of the bell curve. But then, the sum, the mean, averages out. You're in the middle of the bell curve. It's just he's always showing you the extremes. But something's going on here in Ilion that is causing everything to be on one side. It's causing all the extreme and weird things that are happening to be on the negative side, the darker side. And then you have Lord Bryn himself, who came out of nowhere. All right, this is right. Okay, yeah. So he does reference and tie what's going on here in Ilion to Uh, where was it? Oh yeah, the
What are you looking for?
all right. So page 493. Here we go. So Loial is all excited because the inn has an Ogier room.
And
so
I've
he's
got a
talking to
meme for
Perrin
that.
about
All
that.
right, we've got our cover meme.
But then he starts talking about the weirdness and how things feel off. Because Perrin asks if he's afraid of running into Ogier from studying Shangtai. There were, but Nita said they left during the winter. She said they had not finished their work. I do not understand it. The Masons would not have left work undone unless they were not paid. And Nita said it was not that. One morning they were just gone, though someone saw them walking down the Moreto Causeway in the night. Perrin, I do not like this city. I do not know why, but it makes me uneasy. Ogier, Moraine said, are sensitive to some things. So we get a little more of the intriguing nature of Ogier there, as well as just reinforcing the offness that something is wrong there. But then the other thing I was looking for, speaking of wrongness, is so something's off, and Perrin can feel it now too. He can smell it. And he's looking around. I love the way Jordan writes this with the gray man, just slipping it in there and slipping it in there and slipping it in there until suddenly it dawns on Perrin that, oh crap. That's a gray man. Did he smell the gray man, or did he smell the dark hound that was outside, and then that's what made him look around? Because I was curious if he could smell a gray man, or if they were so unobtrusive it also meant they didn't have a scent.
Where's this? I mean, I'm kind of where you're at, but where's the actual when he smells something? Six men. That's after he already smelled, because he always specifically describes the dark hound's scent.
The smell of wrongness is what it says.
Yeah, it just I hate coincidence, and he always talks about the sulfur smell with the dark hound. So I would think he would associate that same smell with that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because he just calls it wrong and he doesn't know. And he has smelled a dark hound before, even though he didn't know it at that time. When he first found that first footprint, while they were on their way down.
Yeah, I can't see him smelling that smell without some passage here associating it with the footprint. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
So I think you're right. He does smell the gray man itself. Just from real life, we know that when you have multiple senses that point you to an object, it's a lot easier to see, even if your brain is not in that perception mode, which perception is a really tough thing when it comes to our senses. But if you have multiple things pointing to the same thing, the perception is almost automatic.
Yeah. Okay. There it is. I was thought so. At the beginning of the next chapter, chapter 43, Shadow Brothers.
You're gonna skip over the part where he just rips a chair apart like it's nothing to use it as a weapon.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Just rips off a leg to use as a club to thump gray men who are pretty clearly after him. Yeah. To the point of just ignoring Lan, clearly the most deadly person in the room. Well, second to Moraine, I guess.
Depends on the situation, because
half a dozen, yeah.
If there weren't other people that she could accidentally hurt around by making the wrong weaves.
Yeah, and then so and the Fail makes the comment about him, and he kind of, which way is the gym? Is it that way?
Bathroom's over there. Coach Grub.
Yeah. So
this is how you dissect a cat.
He's resistant, but there is an attraction there. But then right at the beginning, I knew there was something here about the smelling, and it's right at the beginning of chapter 43. Land came to stand in front of Perrin. How did you know them, blacksmith? He said quietly. The taint of evil is not strong enough for Moraine or me to sense. Gray men have walked past 100 guards without being noticed, and warders among them. Very conscious of Zorene's eyes on him, Perrin tried to make his voice even softer than Land's. I smelled them. I've smelled them before, at Jara and at Remen, but it always vanished. They were gone before we got there, both times. Following you now, blacksmith. The warder gave no visible sign of surprise. Well, yeah. Yeah, because then, so he does say he smelled them, and then they go out looking, and that's when he finds the footprint in the stone and smells the sulfur again. And this is where we find out that they're dark hounds, is what he's looking at. And we find out a little bit about how dangerous they are. And so this pushes him back, because at the opening of his section here, where he's thinking about, he's glad that they were on a boat because it's outrunning the wolves. So he can live and he can sleep without hearing the voices in his head, without sensing the wolves. But now things are serious enough that he's going back into the wolf dream, and he's purposely seeking out Hopper because he needs to learn. I need you, Hopper, as he shouts out. So this is page 505 is what I'm looking at here in the
Did we cross the 44 yet?
No, we're in the middle of chapter 43, and you'll know it because you'll see all the italicized words of Hopper talking. Is when Hopper shows up, tells him it's dangerous here, go away.
Just as a side point that has nothing to do with our thoughts, the hardback and the softback at this point in the book are exactly 100 pages apart.
Oh, nifty. And then you find out the other names for things. Balsamon and Lanfear, Heartfang and Moonhunter. And now there are gray men after me. The not dead hunt you. And now Darkhand, Shadow Brothers. And it's curious to me that he kind of instinctively knows, that Hopper knows more, that Hopper is a well of knowledge, and he goes there asking, not just for, you know what Shadow Brothers are, you know what Darkhounds are, tell me about them. It's, why are they after me? Mm-hmm. Is what he's asking Hopper. And Hopper has the ability to knock him out of the wolf dream, which he does again here, of flee the Shadow Brothers, because Perrin's not ready for this. And I think that Hopper does it here too, because you need to wake up and you need to get out of there, I think, is what is also going on here. The last hunt comes. And I think that's more than just, ominousness or foretelling. I think that's Hopper answering his question. is they're after you because you're important and the last battle is coming.
Mm-hmm. You're possibly the last part of the last battle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which again, not just that he's a wolf, but here we are overthinking, because that's what we do with these books, and Jordan encouraged it with the way he purposely did some of these things sometimes. But to your point, I think maybe it's not just that he's a wolf, but that Jordan is saying the last hunt, purposely linking it to Perrin. That, mm-hmm. And then we're gonna, that's kind of unravel, be revealed even more down the road.
Now, did you see anything, because he has the vision of Mat dicing with the Dark One? I don't really think that's a very, I don't know, prophesorial vision, because we kind of all know that at this point.
Well, I think it could be twofold, because it could be just the generic, Mat as one of the three legs of that stool, and that's his personality. He's gambling, he's dicing, but we're about to get to Caemlyn here, and the literal bet he has that he makes for himself, of making taking the gold that Gabriel gives him and making that bet that I'm going to get there and I'm going to rescue the girls before you can have them killed.
But I guess it's also important for the Perrin storyline, because he hasn't seen Mat since he was sick.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know he's out gambling and healthy and well, but possibly playing a very dangerous game.
Mm-hmm. I love the way this chapter ends with, before he could find words, the door crashed back against the wall and Moiraine stood in the doorway. Her face is pale and grim as death. Your wolf dreams tell as truly as a dreamer's, Perrin. The Forsaken are loose, and one of them rules in Ilion. Well, that's cheery.
And Fael is sitting right there, and I'm pretty sure Moiraine said that before she looked.
Yeah.
Now you know too much.
Well, she knows too much for Perrin's comfort, because she just mentioned the wolf dream, but she does say here in chapter 44, right at the beginning, this is where she gives the option. All right, we need a run. I will give you coin enough to get out of here. This is your last chance. Are you going to leave? And then she says, no, I'm going to stick with you, which annoys Moiraine. But then Perrin blurts out, why is he after me? Why does Samael care about me? I'm not the bloody dragon reborn. Rand is. Nope. Now you've heard too much.
Dope.
And that's when Moiraine turns to Fael, and you're sealed to us now. If somebody else,
well, I think it's important.
Page 511.
Well, I think it's important. She also mentions that Samael doesn't send the gray men.
Yes, and
is that where you're going? Okay.
Yeah, that's what unhinges Perrin ultimately, and that's why he has the outburst, because I do not understand. Perrin said, I seem to be saying that a great deal, and I'm tired of it. I want some answers I can understand. This is, italics in his own head thinking. He pulled himself the rest of the way up so Moiraine would not be looking down on him. She had enough advantage without it. If he did not send the gray men, who did? If a Madral or another Forsaken, he stopped to swallow. Another Forsaken light. If somebody else sent them, why did they not tell him? They're all dark friends, aren't they? And why me, Moiraine? Why me? Rand is the bloody dragon reborn. So it's bad enough that he has to deal with these things of the shadow, but to not only have the attention of a Forsaken, but now more than one. And we've gotten clues that they don't work well together. already, and now we're just seeing it even more. And to Perrin's point, why don't they coordinate? I'd be dead if they would coordinate, but that's not how they do.
Well, I mean, it takes a certain personality type to join that side of the aisle, and realistically, you wouldn't even be in a situation where you wanted to be that way unless you were purely self-interested to begin with. It's basically the nature of your job. You have to throw everybody else under the bus.
Because the Dark One is pure chaos, and that's what he wants. So that's how you impress him.
But even on the small level, we've already had stories where people have sacrificed their families to just even be a lowly level Dark Friend.
I love Moraine's. She's so creepy. You are sealed to us now, Moraine told the bold-faced woman. There is no turning back for you, ever. As for you, Perrin, the white mare moved closer, and he leaned back from the Aes Sedai despite all he could do. There are many threads woven in the pattern, and some are as black as the shadow itself. Take care one of them does not strangle you. She's terrifying. And she's a tiny, tiny woman. Did you have any more thoughts on this chapter, which is just them running away after running away and then having Moraine roast the Dark Hounds?
Yeah, well, we see the balefire again.
Oh yeah.
I wish at this point, this is, I think, a little bit of a, since we see them later and what they can do, but it kind of like comes out of nowhere. I wish you would have seen some sort of fight other than just a little talk. This is one place where Jordan tells you instead of shows you how badass the Dark Hounds are, where she just goes ahead and says, Lan offers to go take them out, and she's like, "You're gonna die. I'll do it."
Yeah, you get a little bit of it where Perrin sets up with his Two Rivers longbow, and he's able to take one of them out, and it takes like 4 arrows, and it keeps before it finally stumbles and stops moving. So,
which again is still kind of off, because 4 arrows does not justify balefire. If it was like 4 arrows and still not dead, then we would.
Yeah. I forget before we finish this
Boromir
chapter.
took more than 4 arrows. Come on.
Exactly. There's a break here, and we have a short section with Matt right before he gets to Caemlyn, where he's taking one of the fireworks apart and freaking Tom out.
Yeah, but I think that's an important little blip, just like your Rand moment earlier, where it was just a couple paragraphs, but it gave you insight into his mind. Well, this is just a short little blip that makes you understand Matt a little bit more.
Yeah, and he's confused and almost disappointed that the thing doesn't explode.
Well, and Tom's a good character, especially at this point in the books, for bringing out the best in the other characters.
Yeah. It did not explode, Matt said, frowning at the fire. Yeah. I do not care why there was no bag. Do not do it again. And this is where we see, so Matt has that same thing about killing women that Rand does. But we get another, here we do get the show not tell of how badass Tom is, and there's way more to him, where Matt never saw the hidden weapon, and so Tom did, and very quickly killed her so that she couldn't kill Matt. The crossbowman was a good swimmer, Tom. That's what I was looking for. The very end of this chapter, the last page of this chapter, is adding to, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, but it was set up in the Great Hunt prologue, Dark Friend Tea Party, where they showed Matt and Perrin and their importance. So we know that the dark side is after them, and now we not only see it but see how persistent it is with one of those who was after Matt and snuck aboard the ship. One of the couple that lived managed to, in the middle of the night, swim a giant freaking river, and then was still after him. Let's take a short pause here. Okay, so before we get into the specifics of the last 3 chapters we're gonna do on this episode, just as an overview, I like the kind of the connection, the kind of the bookend of the opening of this section, which is a hero out of the night, which is Matt just acting on instinct to jump in and save the day. And here we have Matt isn't just that impulsive character. He can also think through when he has to, when he makes himself. So he's not just going to, cut open the fireworks to see what's inside and go, huh, and then throw it in the fire. He's not just going to do that. He can sit and think things through, and then he's going to go charging off into the night to save the day.
Yeah, and again, personality types playing into it. That slightly more chaotic personality actually lends to planning ahead and having a million contingency plans, because you always expect things to not go completely right. Whereas the Perrin type mind thinks, if I put this puzzle together exactly like this, it will unfold exactly like this. And then when you get to a spot where a monkey wrench is thrown in, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
So, you always have your survival kit just in case there's a nuclear fallout. You always have, XYZ plan in place just in case. And that's Matt. He's thinking ahead, but it's like it's not a rigid plan. It's I'm gonna do it, and hopefully this goes right.
Yeah. He comes back, and skipping ahead to the end here to chapter 47, when he gets back to the inn after his encounter in the palace, they want to know what the heck's going on, and he starts it by quizzing Master Gill on who is this Gabriel and where did he come from. He's kind of the wheels are turning, he's gathering information, and then it's all right, we're going to go charging off into the night, and we're leaving right now. We're not even going to spend the night. We're back on the road right now.
You're going to have to fill in the details. I just remember the general overview.
Well,
where he meets the guards.
Yeah. And so away,
plan A doesn't go well.
Does not go well. And this ties in again to the opening of this section here of Matt cannot stand people like this. And that's what gets him in trouble, is this puffed up Popinjay who thinks because he's in charge of this guard at this gate here that he can do whatever to whoever because he's so important. And that just causes Matt to spout off. But so not only do you get, more of Matt's character there, kind of like you saw with the captain of the boat who he couldn't stand, we also see right away that something's off here, because this was not, even though we didn't see a ton of it, we saw enough to get the sense that this was not how the palace operated when we were here in the eye of the world. So something's off.
Well, just the animosity towards the tower is already something off.
Yeah. The animosity towards the tower, the gruffness and brutality with which they treat Matt, and then he literally has to run away. And then we see something that's going to happen a few times as he decides to scale the wall and sneak into the palace.
Well, you say gonna happen a few times. It's already happened. This is the second time.
Well, but Matt specifically. Of Matt specifically, I guess actually we did kind of see the reverse of this when he was getting out of Tar Valon. Is, you know, his little escapade scaling the rooftops and running along the rooftops in Tar Valon. So we've already kind of seen a little bit of this. So it's not shocking that he's able to do what he does here.
Well, but isn't this the same wall that Rand?
Yes.
Falls in? Okay, that's what I was thinking of. That's where I was going with that.
And that's how it's one of the bits in his memory that isn't full of holes, and he kind of vaguely remembers Rand talking about this. So this is how he knows to go looking for it. Oh, and I love his reasoning for going looking for the wall. Is Gil's advice is to wait until the guard changes and then, you know, go back, show the letter straight off, do a little bowing, do a little scraping. And Matt says, you know, to hell with that. That is he is going to bow and scrape to no one. I think we see his luck in effect again here too, that he just so happens to hide under this window because of a set of guards that are taking too long to get out of his way. And so he's able to overhear this conversation about somebody ordering the death of Elaine, of all the girls, really, ordering their deaths. And just so happens to be under there, and just so happens to get interrupted when he's about to tell Morgase, oh yeah, by the way, your lover there is ordering your daughter killed. Just so happens to get interrupted. And then we get some more Elsa Grinwell.
Wait. I don't remember that.
So I'm skipping ahead. I'm in Message Out of Shadow. It's 541 here. So this is when he's taken before Gabriel and Morgase, and they start asking him questions. And so he comes up with this story of who he is, where he's from. I'm Tom Grinwell. I went to visit my sister Elsa.
So and if he had known more at this point, he wouldn't have used Tom's name. But
yeah, so he's able to spin this yarn and spin it effectively, which I think is something not to be. It's not something to be considered lightly here. He is able to lie. I mean, just patently everything he says is a lie. And he's able to convince people who are at the top of the political game, probably the most powerful and well-regarded ruler in the known world here, in Morgase. And then, well, we don't know who he is yet. Gabriel, who is someone so cunning, he was able to come out of nowhere and set himself up as the leader of Morgase's faction and then become her lover and chief advisor. And he's able to lie straight in their faces, and they don't have a clue. They don't have an inkling that because even when Rand went before them, there was, you know, this all seems on the up and up. I don't think you're any danger or any harm, but there was still that wariness there, and there's none of that here.
Well, the word I think that fits best would be the word wit. He's got that quick wit. He's able to ad lib. He would be a perfect improv performer.
Yeah, he's very he's very smooth, because he doesn't have to. You're right. He doesn't have to think. He doesn't have to think in situations like this. He's not thinking through. Okay, well, let me think up a story. It's got to be convincing. It's got to be. He just does. He just does.
And you get good at that if that's the way you do everything. If you're just a Mr. Improvise, then it's not that you don't plan ahead. It's just that you know it's not going to go exactly like you planned. So, the most, what do they say in MMA? The most well laid strategies work until you get that first punch in the face, and then it goes down. Which is why I liked catch can wrestling over jujitsu, because catch can wrestling was, all the flows of one thing to another, and you don't do a setup. You don't say, I'm going to do this to set this up, to set this up, to set this up. Jiu-jitsu is like a chess match. All the moves are the same. They just give them different names. Figure 4 arm lock is a hammer lock, whatever. And all the moves are the same. It's just, I'm going to, okay, so this is the right moment. I'm going to go for an arm bar. And if that arm bar doesn't work, well, an omoplato or, sweep at this moment might be the best one, depending on how they react. And so it's a very tit for tat reactionary type system versus jujitsu, which is, I am going to put my hip to this side. And it's very structured. Someone might argue with me, but I bet you they're doing catch can wrestling while they say they're doing jujitsu. They're just calling the moves by different names. So, and that's the way Matt is.
Possibly.
It's like, I'm going to do X, whether Y comes out of it or Z or A, we'll make it work.
So something we kind of skipped over, but now we're going to sock you back to here, because at the beginning of chapter 47, we have been reintroduced, much like Aludra. We have been reintroduced to a small character who's going to pop back up again in Talonvor.
Yes.
That's who Matt happens to find when he decides, all right, I need to find a guardsman. I need to wave the seal in front of his face and say, I've got a letter for Elaine. And so you see in his interactions with Matt, there at the beginning, when Matt first jumps out in front of him, all the way, and then again here when he escorts him out, you see his intense dedication to Morghese. And so it's, Matt doesn't get it because he's not a political mind. I mean, if Tom were here, he would understand why Talonvor suddenly looks pissed off when, still in character, Matt says, why, if I'd been here during the riots, I'm sure I would have joined with Gabriel too. And Matt kind of gets unhappy. So it's just, you're reintroducing someone who we've seen before, and you want to remind us of him because he's going to pop up again in Talonvor. But then Jordan is also, making double use of that character to reinforce something's off here. There's something's not right here with Gabriel, with Morghese, and with Caemlyn. That's what he says. It's when what about you? This is Matt talking to Talonvor after he's escorted him out. Do you serve Morghese and Gabriel loyally? And that's when Talonvor Talivor gave him a look as hard as the dice's mercy. I serve Morgase, Tom Grinwell. Her I serve to the death. Fare you well. He turned and strode back toward the palace with a hand gripping his sword hilt. So Matt doesn't quite get that, but we definitely get, all right, so some people at least can see something's not right here about Gabriel. And we know something's really not right because he's trying to have Elaine killed.
Yes. Matt does such a good job of reading Talivor just a few paragraphs before that. When he's making his story, he's like, I don't think he'd believe that. So I'll say it this way. And yet he fails to read him right at that moment. And kind of makes a false conclusion that he bets Gabriel says the same. And it's almost like you almost got it right. You could have had an ally there, you know,
because now we're talking politics here, and that's not what Matt reads. Matt reads people.
Yeah. And he read the person just fine. His theory of mind is completely functional. But like you said, when you bring undertones that could be political, he kind of missed the boat.
This is one of the reasons. It seems like a small thing, but this is why we're so pissed off about how they portrayed Abel Cawthon in the series. Is we know from back when, right after he was healed, when we first started to get these Matt perspectives, is this comes from his father, the horse trader.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It's just like the quarterstaff thing.
Yep.
It's a learned trait. His dad was a salesman.
Yeah, his dad was not only a salesman, but the best in the Two Rivers, and even could out bargain a Terran ferryman, which nobody thinks highly of there in the Two Rivers, and they're all considered thieves and scoundrels, and yet Abel was able to come out on top of deals even with them, and that's got to be your Matt boy. Learned.
Damn it!
Exactly.
You could stick your head up a butcher's ass. No,
that would be uncomfortable. So this is where he comes from. This is how he's able to read people. Contrasting once again with Perrin, who's the blacksmith. He's the puzzle maker. It's things fit together. You get all your pieces, you line them up, you treat them just right, and now they've come together to form, one thing. And Matt is Matt's wheeling and dealing.
It's the conversation of, do you work with things or do you work with people? And I would say that you could even break that down differently and say, do you work with structured systems or do you work with organic systems? And definitely Matt is the organic system person.
Did you have any more thoughts on that, or is that where we're going to wrap it up here?
I think yeah, you already brought it up, that his wager with that Gabriel doesn't know about.
And he rolls the dice 5 6s.
I think that's a good place to end off, because it does completely switch to the girls again. Now we're going to try to get through that last part all in one go.
I think that there's not a ton left, and as is Jordan's style, things really start to speed up with the climax. Giggity. And that's where we're at there, with everyone coming together in tier, and it starts with these couple of chapters from the lady's perspective. All right, so that is the end of the chapters 40 to 47 reread. So if you're reading through for the first time, thank you. Now go away, because if we have any spoiler thoughts, now we're going to talk about them.
I was trying to bring up comments because we have 2 notifications, and for some reason, when I click on the notification bell, it just it just gives me a blank screen for right now. I don't know if it's a YouTube thing. It can't be our internet, or else I'd be spotty when we're talking.
Yeah.
But I'm getting, there's got to be something going on with YouTube.
Oh, yeah. That's a YouTube thing. I can't.
Oh, is it happening on your end too?
Yeah, I'm having issues here.
Okay, so if we didn't get to your comments this time, we will make it a point to do it before we go on the next one, which will probably be in 2 days, I think, if we can get to it. We've got to do a COVID episode, so we'll try to do it Thursday.
Here we go. Okay, I had to search for it and find it. Yeah, it was just somebody responding to our.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah. So Scott pointed out when we were talking about the girls and that the shadow knew them, that quoting directly from Balsamon in The Great Hunt, those that could help you are going to be sent away across the ocean. So he was behind that kidnapping in order to weaken Rand, as the second half of Scott's comment there is he at least recognizes the importance of the girls in Rand's mission. It's more than just that. I think it's that well, we're into spoiler territory here, but
well, I wanted to do comments before spoiler.
Okay. Well,
now we'll comment on that in the spoiler part too, but just bird's eye view. What was the other comment that was on there? There was 2 notifications.
He corrected our brain fart of C.S. Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that was the second biggest mistake we've made on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll go into spoiler territory. So those that are reading along as we go, we're about to do spoilers. See you next time.
See ya. It's not just that Balsamon wants to take away that support from Rand. He wants to break him. And that is a major theme throughout all of Balsamon and Shamael Moradin's interactions with Rand, is he wants to break him psychologically in order to push him towards the shadow without Rand realizing that's what he's doing.
Well, let's look at this. Let's look at the dark side. We'll call it the dark side here, as a cult. And what's one of the big strategies for cults to recruit members is to isolate them. And so these women are important to Rand. We got to get him out of there.
Yeah. So isolate him and do double duty by, if you hurt the people that are close to him, that will hurt him. That will put him in a mentally compromised state. And that's reinforced by just what we're seeing here in the Dragon Reborn. When we see Rand after that opening section, it's in very short snippets, and it's harsh stuff happening to him. It's harsh, torturous stuff that's happening to him as he's being chased.
This is not even a spoiler, because we go to the dream sections where Rand is admitting to being approached by everybody he loves.
Yes.
When he lashes out at Perrin and he's like, wait, I think that was really him. But this dream world manipulation of coming after him with everybody he loves.
Right.
Got to be a complete mindfuck.
Yeah. Of having his mother, his father, all his friends, everyone he's known coming in, and then trying to slip a knife into him. So he is that's part of this torture to unhinge Rand. And we're starting to get a glimpse of what's going to really evolve from this, because that's just going to be fed by the madness. The more that he wields the power and the more of the taint that he's exposed to, then the worse off that's going to make him. And
Well,
we're
so
already starting to see that here.
Yeah, there's so many multiple prongs to this. It's isolate him, it's use the people he's gotten away from him to make him paranoid, and to keep him using the power. Because the more the more unhinged he can get him, the more likely he is to convert him. Because we still know we're in the spoiler section. Ishii wants to convert him instead of kill him. He could have killed him at any moment, realistically, at this point in his progression. And it's also a testament to how well Baal Zaman reads Rand. We talked about Lanfear getting it wrong in some ways, but he reads all the boys so much better, and he knows that he will break him more psychologically than he would with physical force, because Rand will take physical pain till he dies. He doesn't want to kill him.
Yeah. Well, part of that is that, and this is major spoiler, but it's been hinted at to this point, but it's not really confirmed. And RJ very rarely actually confirms something until the Rudine section, that Ishii is only partially contained. So it's been hinted at that Baal Zaman is not the Dark One. That's going to be reinforced at the end here when there's a body, but it's been hinted at. So part of Ishii's ability to read them is that he knows this world. Lanfear doesn't. She just woke up, and she's coming straight from a world that is so fantastical it's basically science fiction, to the Middle Ages. She doesn't understand these people. She doesn't understand the world. But the other thing is, she doesn't seem to ever fully accept. I mean, she continues to call him Lews Therin. She never really understands the Rand al'Thor part of it. And Moradin Ishii, because he's such a scholar, he understands the total package. He understands that, yes, this is Lews Therin reborn, but this is who he is now. And so he understands the Rand al'Thor part, and she never really understands that.
Yeah, she's still going by the person she knew before she was trapped.
Mm-hmm.
But also that Ishii in the compendium, he was a philosopher psychologist.
And that's just reinforced by his scheming. I mean, even going back to the Great Hunt prologue, we see the Shiennaran gripping his sword, who we take to be later when we find out Ingtar. Are we to kill him, great lord? And he's already been hurt at this point. He's got the mask on because he's got he was scorched by Rand at the end of the Eye of the World. He's been hurt by Rand already, but he's musing. He's kind of thinking out loud when he says, perhaps, in answer to that question. Is he still ultimately wants to turn Rand? That's the real victory for the Dark, is not killing the Pattern's champion, but turning him. I had another thought for spoiler section, and I don't remember what it is because we've been zipping right along.
Well, I mean, we just found out that this noble that came up from nowhere is a Forsaken in Ilion. I think it's not a far jump for everybody to realize that this.
I didn't want to say it. I stopped myself from saying it in the regular section of the review, but it is pretty obvious that, all right, we just saw Lord Brand coming out of nowhere. Nobody really knows anything about him, and he's obviously a bad guy. And oh yeah, he's Samael. Okay, well now here we have another Lord came out of nowhere, somehow managed to establish himself really high up. Lord Brend is the head of I forget what they call it, the Alien Council there.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabriel has now managed to get himself, Gareth gets put out to pasture and Gabriel replaces him, as well as being Morgase's lover. And we know he's up to no good. And we know he's a dark friend. Yeah. So with the language that Komar uses when he's talking to him, beyond just wanting to kill Elaine. So we know that, oh yeah, we got another Forsaken here. And so we're adding fuel to the fire of looking sideways at everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it all adds weight to Perrin's vision of rolling dice with the Dark One.
Yeah. So I'd mentioned the best story arc to this point, and I think early on it is Perrin, especially when you consider through the Dragon Reborn of when we first find out from Elias and in the Eye of the World about the wolves, and we start to see how that changes Perrin and that growth. And then we come around here at the end of the Dragon Reborn with him kind of starting to accept it. I think the best through the whole series, because I'm nearing the end now in my reread, I think the best through the whole series might be Egwene.
She's definitely powerful.
It's an incredible story arc when you see all the things that she goes through, how she changes and develops, how she reacts, and then the things she's able to accomplish. I think she's a top contender for best story arc, and because it's like a good metal album, it's all killer, no filler. There are very rarely points in her storyline where it drags. There are hiccups in Matt and Rand and Perrin's storylines, I think, at various points. Especially when you get to the very end where there are some issues. And I was thinking after we talked last time, because you'd mentioned again that there were supposed to be 15 books, and I'd forgotten how that all came about, because that was kind of the original plan. But then when RJ was diagnosed, when announced that he had amyloidosis, he was rushing to try and finish things. And I remember my recollection was that around the time Knife of Dreams, which was the last one he fully wrote, was published, he was trying to finish everything in one more book that was going to be called A Memory of Light. And he couldn't get it done because he went downhill pretty fast towards the end there. So then after he passed and it was announced that Sanderson was going to finish it up, I think that's when they decided, okay, well, since we're not in a rush anymore, let's take some more of these notes of things that were supposed to be in the climax that RJ was not going to be able to get done since he was trying to rush it through in one book. And I remember being annoyed that there was a lot of fan negativity when it was announced that there was going to be more than one book, because they kept splitting it. So my recollection was that RJ had announced he was going to try and finish up, and he thought he would be able to finish everything up in one more book. And then his health went downhill and he died. And then it was announced that, well, it's going to be 2 books, and people were kind of annoyed because, you're milking it, or we want the end. And then it was, okay, well, actually we can't fit everything in, so it's going to be 3 books. It really needed another book. And you really see that in the last 2, especially.
Knife of Dreams, I found a little bit lacking too. And that might have been him rushing. Well, it might have been just his mental state too. So you can't fault the guy. He was dying and he knew it.
Yeah.
It's obviously sad that it played out the way it did. But again, we'll get to that speculation of, would have Jordan have done it this way?
Yeah.
And I think there were, and that's the problem with Matt's arc is that end was so important for him, because it was the culmination of this kind of abstract idea.
Yeah.
Where which really played out well in Fires of Heaven, fifth book.
Yeah,
Is that when he really comes about his stuff? Yeah,
with fighting the Shido. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it really came out well there, and then it kind of, I think it was almost a disservice to make him go small time again,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden be big time at the end, which he needed to at least. But I don't know. It's tough because the end kind of was it was like the climax that just went.
I've been seeing that now. This is my third time reading those last three books, and I'm seeing it. I'm noticing a lot more of, things that were left hanging or things that really seemed rush. Various plot points. Not just like wrapping up side stories, but I mean like plot points for the main characters, right? And that's like, okay, well, we finished up that little part of, Matt's story or Perrin's story or whatever, but it was not very satisfying. And I really could see where one more book, but credit where it's due. We have made, a number of negative comments in passing about the last three books and about Sanderson, but I've been watching and listening to people ranting at George R.R. Martin and how it's pretty clear he's never going to finish that series, because why bother when he keeps making, new HBO things that he gets tons of money from.
Well, and this is an opinion on my part, so I'm gonna give that caveat before an opinion. I think he didn't know where to go with it after a certain point, and so he's like, I'm gonna let HBO take it, and if the fans like it, I'm gonna back it up. That's what I was gonna do, and if they don't, then I can save the day by having this was the real intended ending. But now he's still in the point where, okay, the fans didn't like it, but I don't know where to go.
I don't know how to fix it. Right.
I think there's some easy fixes to that. They could have brought the Thousand Suns army back in at the end, and it would have solved the discrepancy between everybody that died in the Winter Night battle and everybody that was there that all of a sudden was alive again at the end. You had this character that nobody really liked, but he would have solved the plot hole.
Yeah. Nerd Roddick has a good video on it because he's read the books and he's a big fan of the books, but he is a a big critic of George R.R. Martin now because of the way he's acted and the way he's just doesn't seem like he cares about finishing the series. And that is, I don't know that anyone could have done a better job than Sanderson at emulating RJ's voice and his style. So I don't know that anyone could have done better than that, but I certainly don't think anyone could have done a better job of finishing, because despite my sometimes problems with his style, Sanderson is one of the hardest working writers out there. He writes a ton and he makes himself, he's very regimented, where he sits down and he makes himself write a certain number of words every single day.
Well, don't get me wrong on this. When we look at the final product, we're nitpicking from an A to an A plus, right? Mm-hmm. The original all the way up until that point was pretty much an A plus. Not perfect, but pretty freaking good. So good that we're spending hours, every week talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's it just knocked it down that one part of a letter grade. Mm-hmm. Not a full letter grade, just that A plus to A. And
yeah, because there are definitely, and we'll talk about them when we get there, there are definitely some incredible moments in those books. And by incredible, I mean awful, because I just read the end of Hopper's storyline and I hate him I hate Jordan for planning it that way, and I hate Sanderson for writing it, because that was one of the worst death scenes of anything I've ever read or seen, because it's such a gut punch. It's the kind of thing, and this is why we're nitpicking, because I think we've mentioned in our spoiler talk before that Ruark is one of the ones that really upsets us because he gets shortchanged at the end, and he's such a good character throughout the series, and that's the kind of death scene you kind of feel like you need for a character like Ruark. And Hopper, he had so much time, so much buildup to that scene that it is a real gut punch, and it works so well because of all that buildup. And so there are still those moments. It's just that because a combination of the fact that it's not the original author, and you can have all the notes you want, but in the end, it's that you can't have what was inside RJ's head. So it's a combination of that and the fact that it probably needed one more book, but I think the publisher was probably getting antsy. Sanderson may have wanted to go back to his own work. Harriet might have been getting antsy because the fans really wanted to get to the end. So there's a combination of those two, but we'll definitely talk about some really good things. And I mean, that's why we started the spoiler section here, is because you have stuff that's being set up right now here in the first 3 books that don't pay off until the very end. And they're good payoffs, because the setup has been going for so long.
I think that's a good place to end it, partly because I have to get back to work.
Yeah.
And partly because we're at an hour and a half just for part 2. So,
yeah. And we've been trying to hit about an hour on our discussions, and then about 20-30 minutes on the spoiler talk at the end. So I think this is a good place to end it. And we'll see y'all next time, wrapping up the Dragon Reborn.
Wrap it up. All right. See you next time, guys. Again, check out the fitness episode if you want to get into that arena, and we'll be back on Thursday, hopefully with more Wheel of Time. I'll try to get these up tonight. After this session, I have a big break, so I'll try to get these up tonight, and we'll see you then.